Thank you for joining us today for our Tools for Life virtual workshop, Homeownership is a Path to Independence, Facts for Homebuyers. My name is Tara Jensen. I'm the Program Manager for the Tools for Life Learning Center at Loudoun Habitat for Humanity. And today with me is Mary Krueger with Movement Mortgage to discuss with us how to find independence through homeownership. Mary, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We do have a lot to cover. So today we would really like to talk about what freedoms you have when you own your home opposed to renting, how home ownership helps to create your wealth, and how to prepare for the purchase of your home. These are what we'll cover today and answer. And again, if you have more questions, please go ahead and ask them in the chat function. Now, Mary, our first question. How does homeownership lead to a path of independence?
Well, first I wanted just to mention that there's nothing more American than the dream of homeownership. It is the fundamental of family financial security, and that in and of itself is just so rewarding to have folks be able to accomplish this. But some of the things that you may or may not think about often is just being free of a landlord, somebody else telling you what to do, when to do it, or how to do it, or that you just don't have the freedom of making the home your own. And then when the reality is you're paying someone else's mortgage, helping them build financial security and build wealth through their home ownership. So it's paying rent, and is there anything to be seen for it at the end of the year each year? So on the getting onto the financial freedom, and it's starting that financial freedom in such that this is the largest investment that you will make. It's sometimes bigger than people's 401ks, and it takes a long time to build wealth in those financing instruments in and of itself. So it is a good sounding board, and really with homeownership being made so easy today that everybody should at least take advantage of seeing, what's it all about? How do you go about it? Starting sooner than later to know, is it today? Is it a year from now or 5 years from now? And what that future looks like for you.
That's great.
The pride of homeownership, and being a part of your community, owning a home and having the best grass cut on the neighborhood, or, just again, taking pride of the gardening and again, the community, you become a member, of a group. And again, in that community within your neighbors and such, so many fun activities to create togetherness and come together, especially in times like this. But whether it's, loss of a loved one or illness of a family member, you immediately have these people that are just your neighbors, and we're all neighborly, no matter, what background we come from. And it's just, being the owner of that home is a little different than just being a tenant renting temporarily, because you're not necessarily there for the long haul. And maybe some people may not make that effort to build that community with you. And like I said, achieving the American dream. This is what it's all about right now, and especially on the heels of 4th of July and celebrating America and our independence. And it's just exciting to spread that word of independence and home ownership, and anything we can do to help get you there across that path.
Great, thank you so much, Mary. So that kind of leads into our next question. What are the long-term benefits of owning your home? So we've talked about, the pride and the community that you build, but what are the long-term benefits in addition to that?
Well, definitely, growing your wealth, adding value with the equity in your home. And we're going to see a couple of slides down later in the presentation. But again, it being a large financial investment and a tangible asset that you can start, building there. Having that, a sound mortgage, typically a 30-year fixed rate, allows you to budget and then save accordingly, and going into this with a plan and knowing, what the expectation is of your monthly payment. Unlike, rental typically does increase. People, you know, those landlords are looking to, again, continue to build their own wealth, and will, you know, raise the rents accordingly, just like any, you know, standard appreciation, you know, what they expect there. But the benefits of just being able to do what you want, making this house your own, and providing that stability for your family, for your children to come home to, if that's the case. But to take advantage of the decorating and the things that that you would want to have without having to ask permission of a landlord per se. You know, and that, again, the stability, consistent housing costs and monthly payments. Once you know what those are and you can plan accordingly, you could better prepare, you know, overall for the budgeting. And, you know, building net worth with the appraised value of your home as an asset. You know, we'll continue to talk about the fact that as you're paying down your mortgage, you're paying down principal, and it's growing in that way in and of itself, regardless of what the appreciation might be. But then the appraised value is growing in the opposite direction of your loan balance. So that equity spread just gets that much bigger. And then the after-tax benefits, you certainly want to seek the advice and recommendations of a tax advisor. I, you know, like to share tips and tricks about the tax side of things, but I also have to say I am not a tax advisor, and, you know, I won't, you know, be able to give too much advice in general, but certainly taking a look at the after-tax benefits and where the biggest benefit is you being able to start paying yourself more paycheck to paycheck, and changing withholdings potentially that gives you more cash in the bank month in and month out. So that's something you definitely want to seek advice from a tax advisor.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'd like to touch on the Habitat for Humanity homeownership program. And really, this is a lot of what we push, you know, as the benefits of our program, this long-term stability and personal wealth growth throughout this process. So we are very fond here at Loudoun Habitat for Humanity of the benefits here, and try to, you know, build our community in that way.
That's great to be a part of that too.
Yes, thank you so much for everything you do for Loudoun Habitat. And for you being here. So our next question, piggybacking on the last slide, homeownership forces you to save each month. Can you explain this and how you build wealth through homeownership?
Sure, absolutely. The thing I had mentioned previously was that paying the principal down on the mortgage helps to build equity in your home in and of itself. And at any given time, you can put extra principal down towards your payment. When we talk about a mortgage payment, we call it the PITI, the P-I-T-I, and the P&I is principal and interest, and then taxes and insurance go into escrow. And sometimes there is a mortgage insurance and HOA that are also part of your overall housing expense. But when it looks to be part of the mortgage, the taxes and insurance are being collected, prorated, you know, in your mortgage, so that there's no surprises. When those property tax bills come due and your annual insurance is due to renew, that's all been paid for by you, but it's forced, you know, the savings pattern so that there are no surprises when those bills come due. So something to think about. It's pretty amazing to think that if you apply one extra mortgage payment a year, you could cut 6 to 8 years off the term of your loan, maybe big more, you know, depending on the size of your loan. But just in a under $200,000 loan and a $1,400 mortgage payment, if you take that $1,400 one payment, divide it by 12, you're adding just about $116 a month. You would pay that loan off in 23 and a half years versus 30, saving almost $22,000 of interest paid over the life of the loan. So, you know, again, it's nice to be able to do these analysis as you get into a home, get comfortable with the types of expenses that go with homeownership and the those new expenses and utilities that you might now have to be planning for. But as you find, you might have some extra cash flow depending on where you're putting it and or investing it in your own retirement in future. Just even $100 a month can make a big difference in savings in the long run if this is a home that you're going to be in.
Great. Those are some incredible benefits. It's amazing to think of what we can do in the future.
Right.
I think we sometimes get so caught up in the here and now and forget, that our incomes will increase as we go through our journey, and our rents will increase. It's hard to remember those things for long term, but it's such a great reminder that there is some cost savings in the long run.
Right.
Home ownership. So thank you. Okay, our next slide and question. How do first-time home buyers start to prepare for home buying and a mortgage?
All right. Well, one thing, everybody loves the internet. We're all very mobile and using our resources out there, and researching loan and down payment assistance programs that you might be eligible for. You can Google a lot of things, first-time home buyer, whatever the case might be, but every county, every state typically has resources available to you. And it's just good to maybe arm yourself with a little bit more of that information going into your future meetings and how you prepare, overall for your loan application. And depending on the venture you're on, the team of a loan officer like myself and a real estate agent or a community like Habitat or the title company and home inspectors, there's a lot of players involved in the transaction itself. And for one of the first steps you would take is meeting with a loan officer so that you can identify exactly what you're qualified for. So you set the proper expectations for yourself and the people that you're working with to be looking at the proper type of home, and be prepared within your application to likely have a 2-year history of employment and stable income, 2-year history of your residence, and the documentation of most recent assets and income. You will then want to also identify your wants and needs for the long term. So why look at a 5-bedroom home that's going to be that much more potentially out of your price range if you only need a 3-bedroom, but you would maybe like a 5-bedroom? So having a better idea about what that range might be, is worth the understanding, but really clearly sitting down, whether it's yourself as a homeowner, home buyer, or you're going through this with a partner, talking about the things that you must have to be happy in this large investment versus those things you would like to have or wish to have, and really be able to see the differential and potentially the price points of those two types of homes. And then taking control of your household finances and savings, sitting down and developing a spending plan with and without home ownership, identifying the sources of income you have today, be it fixed or variable. Sometimes people pick up some extra type of income that may or may not be used in qualifying, but it is good to know that you have it just to help cover some additional expenses that you might want to be, preparing or saving for. But as you develop that spending plan and know exactly what your fixed liabilities are, your debts, and what things you can start to live without on your other variables of whether it's groceries or home care, health care, personal care, clothing, and all the other things that you use that ATM cash for, or any other purchases. But developing that spending plan, reviewing it annually, and making adjustments to live within your means. And as Tara mentioned, in all likelihood, you're on a career path that your income is going to be growing, and hopefully as fast as your house is going to be appreciating. But it's nice to know that that 30-year fixed rate mortgage isn't going to change, at least not the big bulk of it, of the principal and interest. But taxes and insurance will adjust accordingly, as the annual county, reassesses the values of your home. So it is still very stable in the long run. Now, one of the tips I have is, as you start to think about, if you have currently paying rent, $1,500 of rent, and and you're looking at potentially a house price that could be a $2,000 mortgage, that's a $500 differential. And starting today, you would want to start to set aside, maybe open up a separate account that isn't as easily accessible. A lot of people have direct deposits. You could have that extra $500 going into this other account that you don't see. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and see how that feels month in and month out as you, again, are preparing for this, taking on that mortgage. And setting aside the difference of what your rent is today versus what that housing expense is going to be.
Thank you, Mary. That is such a great tip and such a great way to prepare for next steps. Definitely something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So our last question, Mary, is what are the costs of waiting to purchase if you plan to buy a home in the future?
Well, as we mentioned a little bit, the rents increase over time in all likelihood. I mean, some landlords, it's nice in this crazy world we're in today. Some landlords are actually helping the tenants and reducing rents. It's not common, but while your mortgage will stay consistent, it is, you're going to know what those adjustments are likely going to be. Now, the lack of equity impacts your purchasing power. If you wait a year, interest rates might be up a full % higher, and housing prices might also be up. So you could really be pricing yourself out of the home. Right now we are at 71-year lows. Certainly the fallout from COVID-19 is the main driver of our economic situation and current mortgage rate environment, but a 71-year low is very historic. Taking advantage of this today while you can, lock that in and know, you may never have to worry about refinancing down the road. My gosh, if the loans we're doing today, if rates go that much further, down, in a year or so, you're certainly not stuck. You can always reduce your rate and take advantage of the refinances, but at least you know that the pricing isn't going to go up, that those payments are not going to go up. Fear and uncertainty, unfortunately, does impact rates in a positive way, meaning that rates drop when there is fear and uncertainty in our economic and worldly events. So, being attuned of what's going on out there, how can we miss what we're doing now? But taking advantage again, of these low historic rates today while they last. If you don't mind going to the next slide, I want to, kind of point out this differential and starting this investment today, buying a $300,000 home versus renting, okay? And I'm using Loudoun County since that's where we are at this time. But the overall, not only in the appreciation gain, the natural cycle, this is using a 4% appreciation, and this is assuming a 9-year, 5 to 10 years is the typical time frame that people, depending on the type of home that somebody buys, be it a first-time home buyer or a move-up buyer. But 5 to 10 years is, a reasonable time frame to, to be looking at changing. So the appreciation piece would be based on the sales, and it takes into consideration the cost of selling and everything. But you could walk away with $127,000 just of the appreciation. And then, as we mentioned, as you are paying down your principal, the amortization gain is $53,000 in this case. So $141,000, net gain of buying a home versus renting, where you have nothing to show, at the end of this rental period. And how long, have you been renting? We're happy to do these analysis for you, catering these more specific to somebody's personal situation. But I think it's, it's worthwhile, very valuable to see, these benefits. And certainly, in some times of uncertainty, it's not for everybody right away, but for those with the job stability and knowing, what to be buying within your means, we are doing everything we can to ensure that you are not likely going to be set up for failure. We want to make sure you succeed and have that success of building the equity and having that ability to make your mortgage payment across the board. So I think it's pretty cool to see something like this, and gets people that are renting realize there is a lot more value, to start sooner than later if you're ready and qualified.
Absolutely. Definitely. And especially for those who are confident they'll be in their area for a long time. You know, we are moving into a transient society, but there are still so many of us that are, you know, settling down and spending long periods of time in our home, and, you know, really seeing these numbers. The numbers don't lie. So that's a great demonstration of what you can be saving and gaining from this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is our last slide. So we have time for some questions. If you do have questions for Mary, please put them in our chat function. Mary, I do have one for you, and hopefully we'll get another one over here. Mary, what portion of your income do you recommend being your housing expenses?
Great question, great question. Anywhere from 30 to 40%. Now, so many programs have different parameters and guidelines. So the best rule of thumb is 30% of your gross monthly income, not the income that you get deposited after taxes and everything. That's your net income that you put into the bank. So 30% of your gross income is a good standard rule, that no more than 30% should be going towards your housing expense.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one more question? What is the benefit of refinancing?
That's a great question as well. So overall, you know, it's important to look at how much longer one is likely to stay in their home. The break-even point of refinancing is usually about a year to 2.5 years, depending on the size of the mortgage and the differential of what the current rate is they have today versus what we can get them today. And in many cases, we're saving people over 1 full percentage point. Just from February of last year to February this year, it was 1%. So it's you know, hard to believe that just the people that bought last year are certainly taking advantage of this. And, you know, the first big benefit is reducing that interest and reducing that monthly payment. The two things that you're going to pay a lot less interest over the life of the loan, and you're going to free up cash resources that you could further invest in other things. And maybe you're not putting enough in your 401k yourself today because you bought that house last year. We can save you $100, $200, $300. And you can now start putting more of that towards your own retirement type account. Another vehicle that people are using, there's so much equity in homes today, people that have owned for 5-10 years. The numbers of people out there, it's in the trillions who should be taking advantage of refinancing today. And, you know, credit card debt, those interest rates have gone up and through the roof, in my opinion, you know, and that consumer debt, but we've also, relied on this kind of debt. But being able to take advantage of pulling cash out, using the equity of your own home to pay off, you know, some of this, even shortening the term of the loan from a 30-year to a 15-year, so you're not losing time that you've already had. But, you know, you can see how much more interest you're going to save versus the high interest credit debt, and you know, being able to get rid of that, your cash flow is just going to be so much more, you know, free, if you will.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. It sounds like you have been really busy the last year.
It definitely has. It has been busy, but it's a good thing.
That's good. Good for business and great for the community. I mean, it only can boost the economy just that much more. So it's great. All working together, right?
Right.
Well, Mary, I think that is all the questions that we have today. Mary, we are so grateful for your time and the information you provided us and sharing with us how homeownership really can be a path to independence. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being with us. If you've attended our workshop, on behalf of Tools for Life Learning Center, we absolutely appreciate your time and interest. And if you are interested in more free workshops, please check us out at loudounhabitat.org /tools for life. Thank you.
Bye-bye.